Every day, millions of people buy groceries, fall in love, complain about work, and argue with their children in Hebrew. 2 centuries ago, almost nobody imagined that that was possible. This is History Makers, a series where I introduce you to the people who shaped and reshaped Jewish history. Our next history maker is Eliezer Ben-Yehuda, the man who became the leading advocate for restoring Hebrew as a living, everyday spoken language. Before we begin, though, we first need to clear up one of the biggest misconceptions in Jewish history that you might still believe yourself. People often describe Hebrew as having been a dead language until Ben-Yehuda came along. It wasn't, though. This gives the wrong impression. For nearly 2,000 years after the destruction of the Second Temple, Jews continued to pray in Hebrew. They studied in Hebrew. They composed poetry in Hebrew. They wrote legal rulings in Hebrew. Communities separated by thousands of kilometers corresponded with one another in Hebrew. It remained the shared language of Jewish learning, scholarship, and religious life. What it largely wasn't was the language of ordinary daily conversation. A Jew from Poland would have been speaking Yiddish or perhaps Polish to their friends. A Jew from Morocco most likely spoke Judeo-Arabic or Haketia at home. A Jew from the Balkans was most likely ordering their Shabbat food in Ladino, and a Jew in what is now Azerbaijan most often communicated in Juhuri, Judeo-Tat. Meanwhile, scholars from these communities would usually converse in Hebrew. Ordinary families, they wouldn't have been able to. Hebrew united the Jewish world intellectually. It did not yet unite it conversationally, and that was the problem Ben-Yehuda sought to solve. He was born in 1858 in what is now Belarus, then part of the Russian Empire. His parents were Chabad Hasidim, and his native language was Yiddish. Like many young Jews of his generation, he came of age during the rise of European nationalism. Across Europe, people increasingly argued that nations were held together by a shared language, shared culture, and shared historical memory. Ben-Yehuda looked at the Jewish people and reached a remarkable conclusion long before Herzl ever conceived of writing The Jewish State. The Jews already possessed a shared civilization. What they lacked was a language that they could all use in everyday life. He became convinced that if Jewish national life was ever going to be rebuilt, Hebrew had to leave the synagogue and the study hall and return to the home, the marketplace, and the street. So in 1881, he packed up his bags and he immigrated to Jerusalem with his family, then part of the Ottoman Empire. The city was astonishingly diverse and multilingual. Walk through the streets and you would have heard Yiddish, Ladino, Arabic, Greek, Armenian, Russian, French, and many other languages. Still, Hebrew was everywhere. It echoed through synagogues. It filled books and classrooms. Scholars still debated in it, but very few children learned it as their first language, and almost no community used it as its everyday vernacular. Ben-Yehuda set out to change that. He began with his own home. He started with one extraordinary rule: only Hebrew. Not mostly Hebrew, not Hebrew mixed with another language, only Hebrew. That decision transformed his family into one of the boldest linguistic experiments in modern history. His son, Ben-Sion Ben-Yehuda, later known by his pen name Itamar Ben-Avi, became the first child in nearly 2,000 years to grow up with Hebrew as his native language. Pause for a moment and imagine what that childhood must have been like. There were almost no other children who spoke his language. Many of the adults around him were still learning it themselves. When visitors came to the house, Ben-Yehuda insisted that they speak Hebrew if they wanted to talk to his son. And if they couldn't, they were often discouraged from speaking to him at all. According to a famous family story, Ben-Yehuda even kept a male dog and a female cat so that his son would naturally learn Hebrew's grammatical genders through everyday conversation. Whether every detail of that story is entirely factual or not, it captures something essential. Ben-Yehuda wasn't simply preserving Hebrew, he was trying to make it ordinary. That proved harder than it sounds. Biblical Hebrew had words for kings, prophets, vineyards, and sacrifices. Modern life demanded words for newspapers, bicycles, telephones, electricity, and countless other things. Ben-Yehudah searched the Tanakh, the Mishnah, medieval Hebrew literature, and related Semitic languages, looking for forgotten roots that he could adapt. When no suitable word existed, he coined new ones. Thousands of them. Not every invention survived. Language has a habit of deciding for itself, but many did, and millions of Hebrew speakers still use words every day that trace directly back to his work. Yet Ben-Yehudah understood something even more important. Languages don't survive because dictionaries exist. They survive because people choose to live in them. So he devoted himself to building the institutions that a living language required. He edited Hebrew newspapers, promoted Hebrew schools. He helped establish committees to standardize spelling and grammar and pronunciation, encouraged teachers to teach in Hebrew, persuaded parents to do like he did and raise children in Hebrew. He wasn't simply changing words, he was building and changing habits. Not everyone admired the project. Some people thought it was downright absurd. Some religious Jews objected to using Lashon HaKodesh, the Holy Tongue, for ordinary conversation. To them, speaking about shopping or washing dishes in Hebrew diminished its sanctity. Others thought the whole idea was just impossible. Ben-Yehudah disagreed. He believed a language remained truly alive only if children could laugh in it and argue in it, dream in it, and eventually raise children of their own in it. He also knew he would probably never see the project completed. For decades, he worked on what became the first great modern Hebrew dictionary. It eventually stretched to 17 volumes. He died in 1922 before it was ever finished, but others completed it after his death. In many ways, that perfectly captures his legacy. Ben-Yehudah never imagined that this was a one-man achievement. He saw himself as laying foundations that future generations would build upon. And build they did. Today, Hebrew is spoken by millions of people. An Israeli government legislates in Hebrew. Universities teach in Hebrew. Scientists publish research in Hebrew. Novelists write fantasy and romance books in Hebrew. Children whisper secrets in Hebrew. Teenagers complain about homework and discuss their high school crushes in Hebrew. Parents tell their children to tidy their rooms in Hebrew. Friends laugh together over coffee in Hebrew. That may be Eliezer Ben-Yehudah's greatest achievement. He didn't bring Hebrew back from the dead. Hebrew had never truly died. He helped transform it from the shared language of Jewish civilization into the shared language of everyday Jewish life. And in doing so, he helped make possible one of the most extraordinary language revivals in human history. And that is why Eliezer Ben-Yehudah is this week's history maker.